First, I'll start by saying thank you guys for all being here. This is the artist talk for our current exhibition, Too Long Didn't Read. Real time is slower than social media time, where everything feels urgent. Real time often includes periods of silence, reflection, growth, space, self-forgiveness, processing with loved ones, rest, and responsibility. We're living in a time where our attention is more political than ever and has become a form of social currency. Between social media clicks and algorithms, 24-hour news cycles, endless streaming content, apps to ease every inconvenience and expectations of being available at all times, digital distraction blurs our everyday interactions and confuses our relationships to labor, self, community, and empathy. Too Long Didn't Read is coded internet language that exposes the attention culture that we accept as our new normal. TLDR is an internet acronym signaling that whatever content follows could be long, tedious, and/or complex. This exhibition invites us to instead view TLDR as a flag, warning us to pay attention, to be curious about what's under the surface, and to decide critically what to invest our time in. Too Long Didn't Read brings together works by Jose Luis Benavides, Andi Crist, Francis Dott, Hale Ekinci, Häsler Gómez, Kristin Jones, and Yuyang Zhang. While the works range from textiles, ceramics, painting, text, and installation, each artist employs tactics of attention. Yuyang Zhang and Andi Crist use humor and vernacular imagery to disarm their biting critiques of propaganda and professionalism. Francis Dott's 20-foot installation, Time, Ghost Town, inundates the viewer with hazy outlines of history of violence and extraction, inviting us to draw connections that may or may not be apparent. Similarly, Jose Luis Benavides' letters presented from his documentary short, Letters to Lost Loved Ones, reveal and amplify stories that our society works to silence of incarcerated folks sharing their experiences, struggles, and life during COVID-19 through their own voices in handwritten letters and poems. Häsler Gómez and Kristin Jones pulls us in with the repetition, asking us what can be learned from objects and images that may appear straightforward, but when in multiples, expand our knowledge of offered histories. Weaving, stitching, and layering are tactics used by Hale Ekinci to bring us into conversations about gendered labor and immigrant identity, and a tactile web to notice every decision. Too Long Didn't Read offers a moment IRL, in real life, to slow down and witness what's lost in our heightened attention culture and the urgency it demands, what can be found in that slowness and how it can change us.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Jerry. I'm Jenn Sova. I curated this exhibition with these lovely artists, and we're going to start off today, we're going to just run through a different approach to the artist talk, using the theme of attention to really invite each of the artists that are exhibiting and myself to give really short, deep dives into what's holding our attention currently. I'm going to start by reading a few pieces that really I drew upon to create this exhibition. And the first one is actually, I quote in the beginning of the exhibition text, comes from Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy. Page 67, chapter about intentional adaptation, how we change. Starling's murmuration consists of a flocking movement, of a flock moving in sync with one another, engaging in clear, consistent communication, and exhibiting collective leadership and deep, deep trust. Every individual bird focuses attention on their 7 closest neighbors, and thus manage a larger flock cohesiveness and synchronicity, at times upward of over 1 million birds. That's a quote by Sierra Pickett. I'm going to read from 133. It's the chapter on resilience, how we recover and transform. And this is from Adrienne Marie Brown. What we put our attention on grows. We have been growing otherness, borders, separateness, and in all that division, we have created layer upon layer of trauma and vengefulness, conditions for permanent war, practices that move us into battle with the very planet we rely on for all life. The scale of division, conflict, racism, xenophobia, and hierarchical supremacy on our planet is overwhelming. Finding the places of healing and transformation, moving towards a world beyond enemies, is work that has to be done for our survival, which means transformative justice. Justice that transforms the root of injustice is necessary at every scale. But I am particularly focused on how it becomes the common orientation and practice of movements for social change, for peace, for liberation. I tie transformative justice into emergent strategy because it feels like a non-negotiable aspect of our future, and because the natural world has guidance for us here. While we often put our attention on the state and demand transformative and restorative justice, it is important that individuals begin practicing in our personal, familial, and communal lives. We can reach the people we need to reach and measure our work by the way the relationships feel. It is hard work, but it is accessible to anyone, anywhere, at any scale. Eventually, transformative practices that begin small will demand new societal structures. I suspect we can't back into this, demanding that our government provide a form of justice that even we in our movements do not know how to practice. So let's grow our expertise in this. The other quote I want to read is from a book that I've read a couple times, keep coming back to. It's called A Short Life of Trouble, 40 Years in the New York Art World by Marcia Tucker, who is the organizer and curator that started the New Museum in New York. This is from page 160, chapter 12, 1984 to 1993. Just about every exhibition I organized taught me something important. I learned from the research I did in art historical sources, but my real education came from reading the books that the artists I worked with love, or from reading in areas outside the arts, science, math, religion, philosophy, even murder mysteries, because a foray into these fields led me to think about an artist's work in a way that art historical research could not offer. Looking at art historical antecedents has always struck me as circular. You can certainly find out something about recent art by thinking about older art, but the process is self-referential. I wanted to learn about the world, and I've always believed that if you look to a work of art to see what it can teach you about living right here, right now, it'll open up like Pandora's box. I've been criticized for preferring ideas to art, but I never did understand how to separate the two. Nevertheless, that particular criticism had some basis. It's true that I'd rather think about concepts, contexts, the how, where, and why of a thing, than analyze the formal properties of a work of art. If you lay off the parallel lines on the canvas, the balance of light and dark, and other art history shibboleths, then you really look at the painting or sculpture or photograph or installation work or video and pay close attention to the way the images resonate with your own life, then the world of your experience and the world of the artist's experience have a chance to connect. Both of those really informed my curatorial practice, but also this exhibition, and I'm really excited to share that with you. Up next will be Hale.
Hi, thank you, Jen. I also have a little excerpt to read, but and I'm going to focus my talk on amulets and protection and gift exchange, but I want to start with a broader statement about my work in general, especially the common thing that all of my work in the space has is this thing called oya, which are the crochet edgings on headscarves in Turkey that women would make And typically, especially in the past, each pattern would be a symbol that the woman would wear to express her sentiments that he couldn't voice and share openly. So I really like that idea of encoded language and symbolism in visuals, and a way of communicating when you're not allowed to openly communicate. And I think that's really resonates with the theme of the show about paying attention and missing out if you don't, or being included or not included. And as in regards to amulets, there are 4 pieces in the side room that I'm referring to them as amulets inspired by existing amulets, but I make my own in my visual style of textiles. And I want to read this passage from this old book, and it's pretty Western. It's from a scholar from British Museum. So don't mind the words like man for human and things like that. But the idea is good summary. So it was always assumed that materials from which amulets were made possessed certain qualities or attributes or powers which were beneficial to man. To the influence of the inscription or device or name or word of power which was written upon the amulet supplemented and perhaps increased the innate power in the material. To this power, belief added that of the goodwill or affection or love of the giver of the amulet. When to these was added the firm belief of the wearer of the amulet in the qualities of the material, it is clear that no amulet could be regarded as a piece of inert or dead matter. It became, in fact, a working amulet. A dose of medicine might be regarded as an amulet applied internally, and the effect of the matter which composed the dose was supplemented by the spell of the pagan or the prayer of the Christian. The goodwill of both and the faith of the patient joined to them healed him and saved his life. The power and effect of faith in all such matters cannot be overestimated. So I find this is more of a recent body of work, and I'm still thinking about the implications of the handmade as well as it relates to all my other work where I'm inspired by women's work and the disregard of women's work in the fine art world. And I think that brings in the handmade aspect of the amulet and it having its power from the fact that there's belief involved, or there's something about the material. So I like taking somewhat used materials or on the surface not valuable materials like bed sheets that touch the human and bringing them into an object of power that could have more than it potentially has. And in a way, this also touches on the consumerist culture and mass production and the lack of value given to the objects that we get or use or keep in our spaces. That's another thing that I often think about. And another element that I'm using in the amulets is it started from being influenced from the most well-known amulet, I guess, which is the evil eye from my culture. I mentioned I'm Turkish, I think. But then I also think about how it refers to a body part and the eye having so much power that it could potentially affect you in a negative way. So I'm doing this series on each body part. And I started with the tongue and the eye, and then I also have the foot and gosh, what is the fourth one I have at the show? the hand. Yes. So So yeah, so far I have 4, and I'm continuing to build the collection. And as I go, I used to work with archive photos, but for this particular series, I actually, out of necessity, but I'm kind of into the idea too, I've started to picture my own body, my own limbs and things to use as a photographic material. So I'm also thinking about what that means, and literally bringing in the handmaker into the work, but also performative. As I'm like taking the photos, I pay attention to how my body moves and what those gestures mean, or what are some of the common gestures, etc. So I think I'll wrap up there, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose, you are up next. I'll drop.
Hi, Luis. I am going to screen share with you all just a trailer of the film, which is not a very long film. It's only about 17 minutes long anyways. The trailer is about 2 minutes and 50 seconds of Letters to Lost Loved Ones, which was made during the pandemic with about 9 or more incarcerated people across Illinois jails, across Illinois prisons. And it's work that I do with the Illinois Deaths in Custody project, which I've been working with for a long time. And then I'll read 3 paragraphs of an essay that we published last summer regarding the pandemic and the kind of abolition work that we do. So let me just screen share it now. Get that going. You can see this. I can wear this.
COVID-19 stalks the halls and cells of Logan Correctional Center. It nestled itself inside of her already fragile body, pulling her spirit into a premature, preventable, traumatic death. She's hurt, she's wailed, she wanted help, she wanted to live.
Although the official counts are unknowable due to IDOC's duplicity and underreporting, the first case of COVID-19 amongst incarcerated inhabitants was reported around March 23rd, 2020.
Founded in 2015, the Illinois Deaths in Custody project aims to research and document the deaths of all people in custody in Illinois.
These are the names mentioned of those who have passed away in articles in our correspondence with folks inside. Charles Carrico, Robert Eiler, Harold Grazer, Watson Gray, George Jeffers, Nicholas Lee, Denise Payne.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, she has 1 minute left.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to writing and working with you guys.
Thank you, Erica. And that was
He says thank you, Mom.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I love you more, Mom. All right, bye.
Thank you. The caller has.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. No, I have 2 phones. I have you on one phone, I have her on one phone.
Oh, wow. Okay, now I get it.
They set the stage for the ushering of our elders toward death. Her body ravaged by COVID-19, it strips the swagger from her walk, the sass from her talk. It quiets the joy in her laughter.
We see and feel enormous losses for family and people inside, and the need for everyone's release. Prisons have always been a pandemic. People have always died inside because of institutional neglect.
We remember her and say her name. Dot, we remember you. Dot, we call forward your memory, the way you made us laugh and inspire us to be better. We say her name. Dot, we call forward your loving embrace of the young women here looking for guidance. We remember you and we say your name. Dot, We call forward your joyful spirit, your candor, your faith and change. We remember you.
We remember you.
Okay, so that is the trailer. And stop screen sharing. Hope that you could hear some of that. And in the chat, Jen just dropped in the essay that I'm going to read from shortly. It is published in an academic journal about like media and art. So here we go. The COVID-19 pandemic intersected with an uprising that propelled defund the police movements, growing an abolitionist and analysis and practice from the margins towards the mainstream across the globe. While this movement has shifted public consciousness and discourses, the achieved limited policy wins, such as perhaps temporary shrinkages in police budgets in jurisdictions such as Los Angeles and Austin, these extraordinary gains have not translated into an increased push for people's freedom from prison, even during the COVID pandemic. Perhaps the will to police is being challenged, particularly as its whiteness and firm tether to anti-Black racism is amplified by organizing, but the walls surrounding prisons stand firm. Yet the punitive and privatized logic at the core of the will to police and punish is precisely what abolition interrupts, denaturalizes, destabilizes. Abolition centers this question: how does normal or business as usual consign others to disposability? The millions who mobilize in the wake of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor demand #defund the police. The investment of those resources in communities and practices that support the flourishing of all. Stefano Harney and Fred Mutton describe abolition as not so much the abolition of prisons, but the abolition of a society that could have prisons, that could have slavery, and that could have the wage. Abolition as the foundation of a new society. The passages that follow, often less cited, outline that the object of abolition then would have a resemblance to communism that would be in return to Spivak, uncanny. The uncanny that one can sense in cooperation, the secret once called solidarity. An abolitionist practice and politic mobilizes us to query how the will to police, always inseparable from a wider matrix of oppressions, such as white supremacy and transphobia, can be challenged. While surveillance security states is already in place, there is always fissures. Viruses move around walls. People organize despite borders. Solidarity proliferates within the pandemic and inside and against prisons. The abolitionist practices, however fragmentary and costly, are capable of rewiring, rescoring, and interrupting the naturalization of police and borders, and thereby cultivating, as Mutton and Harney suggest, something uncanny. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I hadn't seen the trailer. I loved seeing the trailer. Andi, you are up next.
Hi. Thank you for that, Jose. So I'm Andi. I am currently halfway through my MFA at UIC right now. So I have been thinking a lot just about my work in the context of this institution. And outside of my creative practice, I work as a professional art handler and museum preparator. So I kind of have a technical practice of being carried through many different kinds of like exhibition spaces. And I make a lot of work about my role in that way within the art world and how I kind of am a participant on both sides of this kind of like economy that operates that we all kind of participate in our own different ways. So I think as I've been in this MFA program, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a master. I work with a lot of people who are professional artists, and I am a professional in my own kind of way. And I'm kind of finding all of these distinguishing qualities and all those crossover moments between those different roles, and my role as an instructor and a teacher in the arts as well. So this idea of digging through the meaning of mastery, what it means to become a master, what it means to be a professional in the arts, and what kind of attention that also requires for that practice. So a couple of years ago, I started working with ceramics. I don't consider myself a ceramic artist, only because I feel so young in my studies of this medium, but I have been using ceramics a lot over the last couple of years. In 2021, I had an exhibition that was very much about exposing the unseen elements of exhibition making. And it was a lot of extension cords. It's probably what I have a little bit of a reputation for making extension cords right now. But they're ceramic and they look very realistic to a certain point. And then you kind of get this moment of shifting, of being like, oh, that's not a real extension cord. And I kind of wanted to play with that idea again with the works that I ended up exhibiting in this show, which were the paint by numbers ceramics canvases. So this series of paint by numbers canvases really kind of started with me trying to master ceramics on my own, right? Like within this program, it's very interdisciplinary. And so there's not really a lot of technical training when you come and try to get an MFA, right? It's really more about ideas and navigating how to represent yourself as a professional. But I still really wanted to explore this medium and see what I could learn about putting things together for myself within this space. So I started reading about Dan Robbins, who was the inventor of paint by numbers, which came up right after the Second World War, when a lot of adults were coming home from the war and looking for leisure activities. Paint by numbers was kind of invented as like a leisure activity to do something creative that really kind of extracted the philosophy of art in a lot of ways. It's very much about craft, and it's about slowing down and really making something that's just kind of like lovely to look at. And as I started making these, I was trying to figure out how to craft underglazes at the time that looked like paint. So I kind of used that crossover of, or the structure of paint by numbers as an opportunity to train myself in making different colors and making different chemical combinations to kind of recreate this idea. So kind of connects with the rest of my work in the way that it really is about mastery, but it's also about leisure, and it's also about this kind of crossover in between, and how they kind of define each other and cross-reference in a lot of ways. So yeah, it was actually really interesting at the opening to see how people were interacting with these pieces, because they do look like canvases. That they are ceramic and they have this like depth to them, but they're like a little bit wonky, just like the glazes are. They look like paint, but they're like it's just like a little bit off. So it was interesting to see how people were interacting with them, because they kind of did walk past them like they were just paintings. And I kind of really loved that because one of the great criticisms that I got when I showed this work to other faculty is they were like, well, they don't see, it's unseen labor here. Like they're not really seeing all of the work that you're putting into crafting all of these colors and paints and glazes and stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, but it's like, it's about that. And so it can just be that. And we don't have to kind of over digest that concept. So I developed this underglaze as a kind of a process for putting these works together and making glazes that look like paint. So I just wanted to show one of the test pieces that I did kind of early on, which is it's a picture of my studio, which I translated into a paint by numbers and mixed all of these glazes. So I made a recipe that's equal parts clay, whiting, which is like calcium carbonate, silica, and a feldspar plus mason stains. And each one of these colors gets custom mixed, kind of like a paint, but it becomes glass and it's much more permanent. So the process of navigating the technical aspect of this on my own has been like a big part of just becoming more intimately connected with my craft and the technical abilities that I kind of bring to exhibition making and my own work. So it's been kind of a special experiment. But I really enjoyed showing those off of the show, and I'm glad that Jenn had such a positive reaction to them when I was talking about what felt like kind of a weird and ridiculous idea. So really, really excited that I got an opportunity to put that experiment out there. So yeah, thank you, Jenn, for that.
I love them. I'm so excited that you're also exhibiting work in such a capacity as someone that's been on the other end and being able to also use your amazing skills to help install the show. So thank you all around. Up next is Hasler.
Hey there, I'm Hasler. I'm going to be performing the written work that's included in the exhibition, in addition to the sculpture work that I have in there as well. Writing has always been it's pretty much predated my visual practice. I was always a writer before I actually started studying art. So very much the way I write has always influenced not only the way I think about my work, but also the way I make my work. The specific poem that's included in the exhibition comes from a collection of writings that I've been working on for the last couple of years called Morning Star. And they were really inspired by, I kind of reached a point where I had enough critical distance from the Bible to where I could look at it as a literary text rather than this kind of dogmatic document, which you kind of had to live your life by, and really starting to reframe the narrative of the Bible around the devil and the idea of the devil as this archetype for marginalized peoples, that he was cast out, that he was castigated for wanting to be equal, and really looking at this narrative as the devil being the crux of the narrative of the Bible, that without the devil, you don't have Jesus. Without the devil, you don't have God, that the entire narrative, he becomes that fulcrum on which the entire narrative pivots. So I started wanting to write from that kind of perspective, using the devil as almost like this mask or this kind of costume to put on, because I'm interested in how that kind of ancient narrative can be put within the contemporary context, but I don't want to tie it down to very specific kind of contemporary issues. Rather, I want them to kind of float above kind of our everyday. So the writing in itself kind of fluctuates between, sometimes it gets a little bit old kind of English writing and sometimes more kind of a contemporary writing. So I'm going to be performing the work. I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to turn the camera off because I want you to concentrate on the words and not on me as the vehicle for the words. So a promise whispered in the dark is but a pipe dream looped endlessly. A purgatory with no paradise waiting on the other side. And I know the end far too well, as if I believed it myself. But even so, there's a piece I can't quite pinpoint. The place and the phrase where I was pranked. What verse in the script hooked me? What hook in the song snared me, seduced me within a trance that softly spat one day? Where's the line? Because all I can feel is the punch in the lie. But all of this has already come to pass, these words already swallowed down. Act 4, Scene 7. And if the inferno is what awaits, then let the flames eat. I will recite these lines for the faces huddled in the dark. I'll cry on command and laugh without end. And when the lights focus and begin to fade, I will bow, kiss the air, and amongst the clapping, bite down. My mind lost in the door ringing, listening to the syncopated steps of you walking away, because you always walk away. And in your absence, I am undone, engulfed in the silence of your vacant lips. But when the morning light seeps in, there's still no trick, no secret that my failed character can't see, no wire and no irony. My lips eternally stained, because how could I help myself but drink? Am I forever bound to chase my tail? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hasler. I loved hearing that. Up next is Francis. You should be able to have screen share abilities. Let me know.
Hello, I'm Frances Dott, and my work in this show is Time Ghost Town. One of the central aspects of my project was taking events, structures, and landscapes that span history and location and placing them on the shared plane of these paper scrolls. This exposed patterns and connections that I hadn't noticed before. And today I'm going to be screen sharing with you all a few of the source images that I use to make this work. All right. I'll start with these buildings from ghost towns in the American West. These are places of resource depletion. And to me, these buildings are reminders of the human and ecological costs of extraction. In this work, I used a lot of images of the plywood fortified buildings from the early days of the pandemic. And I also used similarly boarded up buildings from photos of older or more recent displays of gentrification and decay. I'm interested in the political similarities between these modern day ghost towns and then those left over from the 19th century. Um, 2020, the city streets were reoccupied during the Floyd Taylor uprisings. And seeing this critical liberation movement occur amidst the boarded up husks of commercial centers inspired me to interweave these ghost town landscapes with scenes from several unique, distinct liberatory struggles in US history. My work also depicts the inevitable crackdowns on these movements by political and corporate ruling class and the forces that protect those interests. So we'll travel back in time a bit. This is Haymarket Square, Chicago, In 1886, outside of a factory near this location, workers were picketing for an 8-hour day. Police fired into this crowd of striking workers and killed one person and injured many others. This is a labor demonstration, the same location, the following day. Police were harassing and attempting to shut down the demonstration, and someone threw a bomb into the crowd of police. Powerful anti-labor interests and xenophobia resulted in the conviction and death sentencing issued to 8 anarchists, many of whom were not present in the square when the bomb was thrown. This is from the Battle of Blair Mountain in West Virginia, 1921. In this photo, coal miners are surrendering their weapons to federal troops. The Battle of Blair Mountain was a part of the Coal Wars and was the largest labor uprising in US history. This movement to bring coal miners out of conditions of indentured servitude was crushed by anti-union coal bosses with the support of the US federal government and National Guard, who are pictured in this image. The mine wars were legislated out of written and oral histories, and the repression of this movement can be tied to the present-day opioid crisis. This is a photo of the 1971 May Day anti-war demonstrations in Washington, D.C. The demand for an end to the Vietnam War was met with the largest mass arrest in US history. 12,000 people were taken into custody. Now I'm going to go forward again to our more recent past. This camera on a radio tower transmitted footage of a forest fire until the tower was overtaken and destroyed. Time Ghost Town includes images related to climate collapse and its correlation with rising authoritarianism and the increasing power of police. This is the Svalbard Seed Vault, very ominous place. It's a storage facility built in the Arctic that contains over 1 million crop seed samples from everywhere on Earth. It's described as the ultimate insurance policy on the world's food supply. These are mobile morgues for people who died of COVID. This is in New York City. I used a lot of images like this, one of morgues, graves, field hospitals in my scrolls, because to me, these are reminders that negligence is another form of governmental violence, and this ties it to the other events depicted in this work. Then we have a photo of a sunset on Mars. I wanted to venture into space because I'm thinking about how when humans are expand into space, we'll bring our planetary practices with us, be they based in oppression or in equity and mutuality of respect. This is the surface of an asteroid, because in this work, I was thinking about the potential of places like this to become the sites of future ghost towns. And these are holy wells that appear throughout the work. They've been active sites of ritual practices since the Neolithic. These are tied into some personal examinations that I was doing, but that's a different can of worms. But these relate to the themes I've been talking about today in their mythological significance as passageways to other worlds. So wells and then the doorways like these that you'll see throughout Time Ghost Town represent portals and our potential to build new and better worlds. And I'll close with a short quote that reflects my feelings and intentions behind this work. These are the words of the educator and prison industrial complex abolitionist, Mariam Kaba. Let this radicalize you rather than lead you to despair. Thank you.
Thanks, Frances. I had chills the entire time you were showing us. I've seen these before, but seeing them all in a row and hearing your words, it's really wonderful. Thank you. Up next is Yuyang.
Okay, hi everyone. I am Yuyang, and I'm currently living and working in Portland. Portland, Oregon. And it's a pleasure to have my work in this exhibition. Thank you everyone to put this work together. Thank you, Jenn, for putting this show together. I am going to share my screen right now. Okay. I'm just gonna walk you through some of the visual ideas and kind of like inspiration that kind of inspired my studio practices. So my work contains hold on. Here we go. That's better. Okay, so my works, I work in paintings and I make mixed media collages, and my works often talks about the experience of a diasporic queer Chinese artist, and also the experience of people of diasporic communities who tries to build a life in a foreign country. Like in my case, and this case would be me trying to build my career and build my life in the United States. I use historic propaganda posters, memes, screenshots, and also my personal photographs to create most of my work, at least to use them to mood board for most of my work. So for the propaganda, I have this book, which is a collection of the Chinese Communist propaganda from I would say from 30s to all the way up to 1990s. So this book has been my main source of visual inspirations. And the one thing I noticed when I was going through the propaganda, all those propaganda posters, is that they are very fragile in a way that when you take all those human elements out of the propaganda poster, they become so easy to it is so easy to subvert the original meanings. So by taking them out of the original context and putting them back, putting them into a new American pop culture context, I was able to make my work and make the propaganda figures very contemporary, very funny, and very queer. And this is some of the work that I created that showcase that. The mode of making, my making is more of a director's approach. I always considered those propaganda people are like actors, and all the screenshots or the button or the things you see online, they're kind of like script. So script that will allow the actors to act certain ways. And the final part is my personal photographs. So personal photographs are my personal memories, but they also act as stages, so which allow the actors to have something to perform on. So every work is like a theatrical act. Every work is like a little drama that tells you a alternative stories. So I would say for the past year or two or three, these are the two main pop culture elements, pop culture resources that inspired a lot of my studio practices. So first is Taylor's folklore that came out in 2020, and then WandaVision that came out in 2021. I personally really relate to this music album and this Marvel's TV shows because they Taylor's album really inspired me to work in a way that I can create this alternative universe where I can put each characters in each work, and then among all my art pieces, they have cross-reference with each other. So I learned that through Taylor's songwriting and through her lyric. And then WandaVision was truly the comfort show for me for the 2 years while I was applying for my artist visa, and while I was waiting for the result, because it helped me to get through those dark times, but they also give me inspiration to create a alternative world in my work, which is also the premises of the show, where this character Wanda, she was able to use the magic to create an alternative world that help her to escape from the reality, which is what I do pretty much every day. Some of the other resources that further confirms, just like, confirms my practices, like, kind of the idea of, I am from China, but then in a way that I am subverting all of my work to be kind of like very queer and very gay. And I think about this image that I found on Instagram kind of really encapsulate that. And then the idea of like this TikTok screenshot that categorized Wanda's character as being someone who's always looking for stability, but she just hasn't been able to have it, which I think speaks to a lot of us who is trying to find stability by, getting that piece of paper just so we can be here legally. And more images, more screenshots from, social media and, WeChat with the Chinese social media. And then the one on the right is the Instagram ad that is pushed to my Instagram. So yeah, this is what what the Instagram algorithm that's pushing to me is like, I'm getting ads from, custom border control. So I just take all the inspiration from the screenshot and then put that in my work, where you can see a lot of like, digital elements in my work that speaks about, my experience of, getting a visa or getting to be approved by the immigration service. My mode of making this also very adaptive. So oftentimes I can use a very similar, background or visual information, and I make it using two different mediums. So I can make work into a painting, but also I can use the same elements and turn that into a collage. And I think about, and that makes me think about the idea of being adaptive and being adaptable to situation, which also talks to the idea of, this identity of when you are in a different culture, when you are in a different country, you have to be able to adapt to new languages, new mode of thinking, the way of thinking, and how you interact with people, and so that you can, survive, or in a way that you can be accepted by this new society, and also just to showcase this. One of the documents that I received over the past 2 years from the USCIS, which is the Immigration Services. Some of you might be familiar with that. So just like, 7-10 pages document I have to go through, which also talks about the idea that, the too long didn't read. I never read through everything, but I don't need to read through everything just to get what they're trying to say. So just like think about how information, overloaded information on paper and on document, and how they tremendously affects my life, and affects people like us, the life of people who are also like me. To wrap up, and more Taylor, this is the one song that I really relate to in the idea of, that talks about the idea of being enough. That I feel like for a lot of people like us, all we do is to try, and we try our best, and we put 120% of effort, just so we can be enough, just so we can, get a day job, just so we can have an average life here, which really talks about, really reflects how cruel and how inhumane this kind of this bureaucratic system is, and that really affects me, and it really affects me in a way that like this the verses from the image on the right is like a verses that really to me, at least, I can relate to everything to the line, which I'm not gonna dive into every line, every word of this line, but so these are some of the visual inspirations that helped me making the work for the past 2 years, which includes the work that is in this show. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has just been my own personal geek out to all of you, which are some of my all-time favorite artists. It's been a joy to put this entire exhibition together. And thank you so much to Heaven, to Alma, Jerry, and Francine. I really have enjoyed every moment of it. And quick shout out that next Sunday at 5 p.m. at Heaven Gallery, we're going to have a screening of the full film of Jose Luis Benavides, Letters to Lost Loved Ones, and then there'll be a conversation afterwards too. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Alma.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. The show is so beautiful. Everyone has really enjoyed it, and they're telling us what an incredible, tactile, gorgeous show this is. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, and we look forward to next Sunday.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.